Hello, everyone. For those who are new to our podcast, we are a knowledge sharing platform where we discuss various topics related to cybersecurity, domains, and products. Today, with us, Mr. Charles Tony, who is the regional director of Speartip Middle East, is joining with us. Welcome, Charles. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Jijesh. And I really appreciate you organizing this channel here, and I wish you all the very best for this.
Thank you so much. Because in the current scenario, if you consider the adversaries, the bad guys, the hackers, they are more organized. They are more shared, and they are more oriented towards their targets. So why can't we cybersecurity professionals have a knowledge sharing platform like this, which will be helpful for it's like one person's experience will be helpful for the other professional for sure. This is the whole idea of starting such a platform here. Okay, so since you're from a vendor who predominantly provide MDR solutions, just wanted to start the topic from our discussion from there itself. Actually, see, the aim of any organization who takes or who adopt any cybersecurity solution is eventually to attain a proactive security for the overall cybersecurity resilient posture of their organization. So, considering that fact, how good or how an MDR solution can help any organization to achieve such a proactive security? Like, what's your thought on that?
Sure, Jijesh. I think that's a good question or good segment to start with. So, though I'm from the vendor side, I think I speak in general for the cybersecurity community as a whole.
You can be because we all Speartip, that's okay. You can be specific.
Sure. Yeah, no, but we always say that tomorrow is often the busiest day of the week, right? So that's kind of the idiom that we always talk when it comes to proactiveness. What we mean to say is that don't wait for tomorrow. It's very busy. Let's act today, and that's about being proactiveness. And now, when we talk about proactive steps being taken, businesses need to align with the technical team. There's plenty of different gears working together to make that proactive step a reality for many of the IT team members in any organization. And that's where the managed detection response comes into play, because that's a service, that's not a product, but that's a service that is wrapped around multiple products that you're already running in an organization, where you're actually getting a real-time threat detection, threat hunting, and an active response 24/7, 365, from any cyber threats. And we all know, as you said, the criminals don't take holidays, don't take any weekends, they probably don't sleep, I don't know. Or maybe they sleep when we are awake, and then they start up when we're not. So the program Managed Detection Response is designed to strengthen the company's current security monitoring capabilities in a way that it can address all the gaps that exist in the threat detection. Now, when we talk about MDR, one thing that is also important to remember is the quick response aspect of it. And again, we're trying to map our thought process to the actual cyber criminals, right? They are very fast. They want to get in, do the job, and get out very quickly. And they're very fast in finding where the targets are, what is of interest to them, right? We always say they are probably the best hunters in the world, because they find their targets pretty easily. They know where their bounty is sitting at. So looking at all of those things, we also need to align our thought process, our activities, our solutions to the way that these threat actors are going to attack us. And here is where we actually talk about a few steps that the threat actors usually take into account. If I just break it down into 5 steps, they start from planning, intrusion, enumeration, lateral movement, and completion of the objective, right? So they plan their steps and movements into these 5 different steps. And that is where the direction of attacks becomes really important, because the first 2 to 3 steps is where it's very critical. From the moment that intrusion happens to the moment where they start to do lateral movement, right? That's where it all begins to become, the hell start breaking out in that point. And this is where the MDR being proactive steps come into play, because before they start doing the lateral movement, you're prepared to respond to it. Because you actually have to remember, sometimes a single cyber attack can put many small, medium companies out of business. They can go out of business very quickly, and if their systems or reputation is severely damaged, and sometimes data loss can be really damaging to them also. So companies who are investing in MDR solutions need to develop an IT security strategy. And not everybody can afford to do that. I'm telling you, not everybody can afford to do that. But whoever can do that, they should do it. But whoever cannot do it, they're like outsourcing their services to someone, an expert or a group of experts, right, to look into the environment. So today's digital environment, that is, I think, becoming more and more important, which is why you see a lot of MDR service providers coming into the market, which is in general good to protect the economy as a whole. Because a place like Dubai, for example, there's a heavy reliance on the SME sector in their success, in their continuity. Any hindrance or hampering that happens to their success can have a severe impact on the Dubai's economy itself. So we are hoping for the best. So we want to be able to protect them as always.
Absolutely. So like extending the same, like the thing of responding to the cyber security, cyber breaches actually. So in the current era, as you said, the adversaries are smarter actually. They themselves uses the artificial intelligence and machine learning for weaponizing their attacks. So it is. When we consider the same proactiveness itself, how good an MDR can help an organization to be to provide an automated response for any cyber attacks.
Yeah, see, again, another good segue into a conversation I think that you had in one of the other podcasts, where one of your other guests was talking about how zero trust today is being misunderstood or misconceived, because zero trust is not a product or a solution. It's actually a journey that he's talking about. I think that's a very valid point that he made in your. And I obviously encourage all your listeners to go and view that session also, where he talks about how zero trust is a journey where multiple service providers and the end client works together to make that zero trust framework a success, right? And here is where a company or an organization or an entity like a managed service provider will come into play, right? Because today, if you look at our market, our region today here, there are a lot of MSPs who are trying to protect their clients' environment and trying to help them do the cloud transformation. Everybody goes through cloud transformation these days. Everybody wants to move their workload into a more agile, more reactive format, and that's where MSPs will play a big role. Now you talk about the automation aspect of it, right? So you can bring in a lot of automation into play in this kind of environment, but you still need a human intelligence at the end of it to be able to respond to that changing tactics, right? You talk about TTPs in there. I know if there's a business person who's listening, you probably not understand TTP, but techniques, tactics, and procedures, right, that they apply to get in an environment. So this is where you need a bunch of technology and products working in tandem with a group of experts and skilled people who knows these threat actors also. Because if you really think about it, some of these threat actors are not great coders, right? They are not the best coders out there. They create clunky codes. They take different AI components from multiple vendors and multiple products. They steal code, obviously. They bring together and make it run. The objective for them is money making, right? Many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, money making. So for them, they don't have a software development life cycle as a software company would do, right? There's no testing of the product that they're doing. They don't do that these days. What they do is just to write a code to make sure they are able to infiltrate into an environment that malware can run into there, or leverage an employee in many cases to get in there, do phishing attacks. But yeah, the automation system comes in and plays a big role. But I firmly believe that 24/7 SOC team that runs there plays probably a bigger role than the automation technology in there in defending that organization there. So it is important to have all the technologies in place, but it is even more important to have an expert or a group of experts sitting behind and looking at the environment and responding to the threats.
Absolutely. So when you said about the security operations center, which actually adds me some extra thought processes in my mind. In fact, the recent past years, I must say, as you said, there were many solutions which were acting as a collective effort. But still, organizations, they say, if we consider a SOC itself, the resources actually, they say still they find a lack of effective utilization of their SOC resources actually. So when we consider the overall, let's say, when we consider the overall architecture, or when we consider the overall deliverables of an MDR solution, how it can help an organization to utilize their resources effectively. What's your thought of that?
Good point. One thing that, obviously we'll get to that, but today is July 4th, and there's a specialty of July 4th. It's obviously not I'm talking about the US July 4th, but I'm talking about the Kaseya attack, which happened last year on the same day. So today is the anniversary of the Kaseya VSA attack, but obviously time zone difference there. And if you remember the impact of that attack, it probably affected over 50 plus MSPs globally who were using Kaseya VSA servers at that time. It was, as you know, it was Rebel ransomware attack that happened at that time. And these were attacks that impacted a lot of companies, but at the same time, a lot of other companies took proactive measures at the right time to prevent it also. So that we know the stories of people who have got affected, but sometimes we don't know the stories of people who actually defended themselves and they are okay, right? They've not got affected. They've been able to shut it down on time. Now, how was that possible for all those things? That is where all this people knowledge sharing, exactly what you're doing now, right? This kind of environment, threat intelligence sharing that happened, helped them. Now, mapping this conversation back to your resources
utilization.
Let's say utilization at that time, right? The problem with a lot of SOC that people may have today is that there is no real active collaboration between SOCs of the world, right? There's no active collaboration in the people that are there, because all said and done, reskilling is a huge effort when it comes to SOC, to have the right kind of resources. And in our part of the world, we also have this attritional issue, right? You hire a SOC engineer analyst, spend short span of time, and then goes away. So that's a challenge that we have as a business here. But reskilling is always a challenge, and that is where the MDR solution providers comes into play, because the benefit of an MDR service provider is that they usually keep a pool of resources. Again, I'm talking from the vendor perspective, so I know how the business works, right? So it usually keeps a pool of resources with us, allocated to multiple partners and clients globally, right? So there's never a problem of that that occurs to us where we're now suddenly short of resources to be able to monitor particular logs in there. And we all know today's number of EDR solutions and SIEM solutions are really alert factories out there, right? So they produce hundreds of thousands of alerts in some cases every day. To sift through that, to identify the real alert in there, you need a lot of skilling, in that set. And your point is correct, that resource gap exists today. The knowledge gap exists significantly today in our world. my feeling, I mean, it's MDR service providers who have that economy of scale, who can actually cushion out a lot of these kind of small impacts that happens with people dropping off, but because they are able to keep that pool of resources and pool of knowledge base also with them, that is now shared across all of them. So we have responded to Kaseya last year. We have made sure all our partners globally are known about that vulnerability that is existing in there. So all our partners were protected at that time. And that was really possible because of this global knowledge sharing that happens through this MDR world. That was our reset. A standalone SOC somewhere out with a big customer anywhere may not have got that information at the right time. And if they had any appliance from Kaseya, there's a likelihood, I'm not saying they will be, but there's a likelihood that they could have been compromised, right? So yes, resources are still a challenge. And we firmly believe the answer is somewhere in the MSP and the MDR world.
Absolutely. Because last month actually I was going through an article in which they were mentioning that when we consider the same setup of a SOC or a same security team altogether, 20 to 30% of overall tasks, whatever they perform on a daily basis, are repetitive in matter actually.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So for example, let's say if we consider the threat intelligence incorporation or threat hunting process or vulnerability assessment, so these are repetitive tasks actually which they conduct. So MDR, when being which have a dedicated resources, which can allocate the dedicated resources for the organization to conduct all these activities, so that their resources, their cybersecurity solution, their cybersecurity resources, their team can focus on the mission critical areas of their organization. So definitely.
So good point to just there. We always talk about, in cybersecurity conversation, we always talk about attackers. I think it is time that we talk about defenders also, right? Defenders are people in the SOC, right? Let's talk about them. For them to be able to continue to do this repetitive work, it can be difficult, especially when if you have enterprising, if you have ambitious guys who are there in the SOC or girls who are there in the SOC who wants to be able to take up challenges periodically, right? More repetitive work obviously will put a lot of fatigue in them. Now, how do you manage this fatigue, right? Because there may be something out there, but I have not yet seen any podcast or something. Maybe you should have a conversation about defenders itself, talking about some of the SOC analysts. But then you should try and think about their frame of mind also, right? So you need to make sure that there is enough incentive, there is enough activities involved in them from an employee engagement to keep them excited, keep them interested in not just doing this mundane works, but also when it actually comes to the real event incident, they need to be able to proactive and start reacting to that or responding to that. So yes, I mean, and an MDR solutions provider or a SOC provider like us, a global SOC provider like us, usually conducts a lot of employee engagement programs continuously throughout the year, which makes sure we keep our people happy. In fact, Speartip was voted as one of the best place for employees to work in this year from St. Louis in the US. So these are all testimonies of how we keep our employees engaged throughout the period, throughout the process, to make sure they are fit and active when the actual incident happens also, right? So yes, I mean, when we do a lot of talk about attackers, but it's also time to talk about defenders.
Absolutely. So they also have to be considered. They also have to be more streamlined and focused eventually towards the cyber attacks. Cyber.
Well, streamlined, focused, and also motivated. Right. So
yes, very important.
They need to be motivated always. They need to have enough amount of incentives and motivation to go forward. We see this time and again that the threat is increasing. We as an organization respond to over 1,000 incidents, close to 1,000 incidents in a year's time frame. That's a lot of work, right? So, but then that allows our guys to actually keep coming up with new challenges, keep responding to new challenges. So that keeps motivated them, but obviously there are other things. But look at another SOC provider. If somebody was to have their own SOC, somebody is to sit there and do 30% of the repetitive work, just by going by your stat. By the end of first year, think about 4 months of his time has been doing same thing over and over again. I'm sure fatigue will slowly creep into him, right? So and again, you also have to think about how new data protection laws are coming into play, right? This is another angle to the same conversation. Data protection laws are coming in, which is now requiring data residencies in all of these different countries that are part of the world. And now with a lot of workloads moving into the cloud, even that is becoming more and more interesting. You have now a blend of virtual and physical assets, right? Data residing in a local server, but some of the critical data is now residing in a cloud server. So you need the blend of both to be protected there. So the resource allocations, skilling, reskilling, defenders being put in the center of our conversations more and more are all important topics.
Absolutely. So in the recent recent environments, I must say, the resources are getting more and more areas of focus. Like as you said, there are hybrid infrastructure has been across everywhere. So at the same time, they are getting. It's very important for them to keep them motivated and to gain more and more skills in those areas as well. Actually, so definitely it will be helping eventually the organizations to have a better security, a strong security team who are proactively able to respond to any breaches or any hits. Yeah. Perfect.
Exactly. I mean, so far we haven't talked any technical topics yet, right? We've only been talking about the emotional aspect of it. We've only been talking about business risk. Even just these two topics have thrown a lot of ideas between us so far, right? And so we see a lot of workshops, we see a lot of technical conversations going around. I think there's plenty of resources out there in the internet and among peers to share that. But I think it is also time to look at that emotional aspect as we are getting prepared to defend a lot of organizations, defend ourselves and our partners against a number of these criminals also. So this is all good conversations, yes.
Absolutely, because eventually when we see these cyber criminals, they play with the users' emotions. So it's very big factor, actually, I must say. We should be considering.
True. I mean, social engineering is one of the biggest threat right out there for infiltrations, and we as cybersecurity professionals try to profess how social engineering can be prevented. How do you train employees to protect themselves against and again, we also talked a lot about defense in depth for themselves, right? Yeah. It's probably time to talk about how we are preparing ourselves to protect them also. So a lot of training needs to happen among professionals like us in being able to do it. I'm sure there are a lot of them out there, but I think there needs to be more on that.
Absolutely. So it's very important to keep them aided with at the same time technically plus logically and emotionally a balance altogether.
100%. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great. Actually, within the limited period of time, I think we have shared enormous amount of knowledge. I must say these are very discussed but not driven into topics. Actually, I must say, which will be very helpful. I believe whoever is watching this, whoever will be watching this podcast, it will be helpful for them to have a discussion among themselves also, or think about these topics among themselves, their team as well.
I know. I mean, see, we probably started talking about MSPs and proactiveness and MDR, and we slowly segued into the emotional aspect of the defenders itself. But yeah, I think it is high time that we see more and more companies in our region, cyber companies, talking themselves as the best place to work for employees, right? And then you're in a better frame of mind to start protecting yourself. But at the same time, protecting businesses and their data and their network and the devices are also equally important. Technology is out there, but more importantly, we need a lot of more people out there to defend ourselves.
So it's very important important not only to invest on the technologies, but to invest on the users as well, for sure. No doubt in that one, actually.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Absolutely.
Good.
So great. Thanks, Charles, for joining LinkCyb. It was great talking, great discussing with you regarding, like I must say, for few most relevant and very important topics that we discussed here today. So great. Thanks for joining LinkCyb. So you have anything to say to our viewers regarding the MDR or anything related to the technology which you're into?
No, I think we are obviously, as you said, we are an MDR service provider. We are building our channel partner program in this world, in this part of the world, and we are obviously looking for more channel partners to come on board so that we can start protecting themselves and their clients. But from your perspective, Tijesh, I think I wish you all the very best, LinkCyb. I think it's a very noble effort that you're trying to do here. I'm sure it will be really successful. It is important to start conversing. It is important to come to the public realm. It is important to share ideas and knowledge. Do not restrict. We are talking about the open data world, so it should be available for everybody and anyone out there. And again, hopefully your channel will keep growing, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and have a great day ahead. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.